soon. I won't have time to run half-gassers. It's probably going to run like 15 or 20 half-gassers, which, first of all, no. My God, it's so much further than I remember. But this was cool, man. The last time I remember feeling this kind of just overwhelmed after a playoff game was the Buffalo game when Bill O'Brien is getting fired at halftime. Then they came back and won that game. This was a really, really cool game. After being miserable for, 28 or 29 minutes or so, that was fun. That was the right kind of weird. It was not like the kind of weird where you stumble into the wrong niche on the internet. It was the kind of weird where you're like, oh, this is something I can get into. I might be all right with this. Whew. CJ Stroud, man, it it took 17 and a half games, almost 17 and a half games to feel like they might have figured something out here. Attacking the middle of the field with slants, really exploring the space, all of that. And some of that comes with having better pass protection. Not perfect pass protection. And there's still issues and blemishes and questions on the offensive line. A lot of you guys that watched on television have a better view of a lot of that stuff until I go and rewatch the game. But their ability to run in the second half, that might have been one of the most encouraging things, because it was opening up like the Red Sea there a lot. And it was because the Rams had to respect the pass game at that point. The Texans defense, the fact that the Texans were still in that game when it was 6-0, it felt a lot like the 2002 game that we had versus the Steelers, where we won that game with 47 yards of offense. And when it was 6-0, I was really thinking, like, you know what? They've had a lot of close calls at this point, up to that point, that didn't turn into interceptions. I mean, it was like an inch or two to the defensive line. The defensive line's harassing Justin Herbert all night long. The defensive backs were playing so well. They were something along the lines of, felt almost like a little bit of the strategy that the Rockets and other teams would use versus Kobe. Remember, you put Shane Battier on Kobe, and you defend him hard, but you don't double him. And you maybe let Kobe feel enough that, like, yeah, he's the guy, and you turn him inefficient. And it looked like Herbert was just forcing the ball to McConkey so hard that he was turning down some opportunities elsewhere. And then it all turned to mush. I mean, he turned into a bad decision maker. So, the only quarterbacks who've had genuinely good games in this stadium this year by the opponents are Lamar Jackson and Will Levis, really, right? Like, that's weird, but you can add Justin Herbert to the group of Josh Allen, Jared Goff. I mean, Jared Goff ended up winning the game for him, but throwing 5 interceptions to Tua Tagovailoa. Credit the crowd noise to any of you guys who are here. That was big. I think it turned into chaos, and they really started to pour it on after things started going the Texans' way. But the front seven, for the first time, had all 7 guys healthy. And versus this team where that fullback they have is a fucking hoss. I thought the first time he lined up, I thought it was an eligible offensive lineman. And they'll play with a fullback. They play with multiple tight ends. They want to bruise you. They want to play. They would like to. Jim Harbaugh wants to get to the point where they can play bully ball, but they could not play bully ball versus the Texans front seven. And it wasn't just that they were harassing Justin Herbert. It was the nature of some of those pass rushes. Danico Autry just completely castrating and emasculating that guard on that bull rush that didn't even end up being, it wasn't a sack, but ended up being an incompletion on third down. Like, it was like that all night, all over the place. You look up and there's some defensive lineman just destroying some poor offensive lineman. And, that was something the Chargers gave up a lot of sacks this year. They'd cleaned it up in the second half of this, or, the latter part of the season. But, they have been vulnerable to sacks before. And if you get the best version of the Texans pass rush, which they did tonight, when you get Will Anderson playing the way he's playing. Will Anderson was in the postgame, and I was sitting in there with those guys kind of in the corner. Like, can I have your autograph, Will? But Will had one thumb all taped up, and then his left thumb looked like a mangled mess. It was just like, he just looked like a dude who had just played a hell of a football game. So that was really cool to see. And Will talked about how much of a difference it is having Azeez Al-Shire out there. if you want to look ahead, which I encourage you not to do until after we know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow, we'll know by tomorrow exactly what the scenario is going to be. You got to, like, I don't want to sit here and say, like, oh yeah, they can totally beat the Ravens. They can be different versus the Ravens, and it seems like, well, how much of a difference can one guy make? It's not just one guy. It's Aziz Al-Shire. It's, Foley, like having all 7 of those guys together, but especially Aziz Al-Shire and having 3 linebackers, because now they've got 3 linebackers where they can run their base 4-3 versus physical offenses, and they can stand in there and they can stop the run without having to blitz or bring up an extra guy into the box. They can play different coverages. I thought they blitzed effectively tonight. Eric Murray, great play by him there in the second half. It really is a much different team with Aziz Al-Shire out there. So we won't worry about that right now. We'll find out who the Texans are going to play. But that was, to me, the most encouraging thing. Because I still think that if this team's going to make a playoff run, just like a lot of us have been saying all week, it's going to have to come with a ferocious pass rush and a whole lot of interceptions and turnovers. And, they had the makings of it in the first quarter and a half. It just wasn't clicking quite yet. The ball wasn't bouncing their way. But let's see, the champion. Who are you asking? The champion, who are you asking? Where are you at? Or which game were you at? I got to start looking at the comments. Let's see. It's going to be all defense versus the Ravens. Come on. It'll be the Ravens, dude. What game were you at? You sup. I don't know if you were trying to write you suck. If so, you're either drunk or stupid, because it didn't come out that way at all. Oh, Rex Ryan. All right, Rex Ryan. This is what was so dumb about Rex Ryan. Like, Rex Ryan making his little joke there where he just, he pretends like he wants to be a head coach, but you don't talk that amount of smack and still actually think you're going to get back into the league. The problem with saying that this is going to be like a bye week for the Chargers was dumb on a lot of levels. One, the Texans were 3-point underdogs. So, I can go multiple different ways. The Chargers were favored for a good reason. I didn't have an issue with that. I didn't feel disrespected or anything like that. They've played like a more complete football team. But there's no reason you should go into that game thinking, oh yeah, they're going to get mollywopped and there's nothing else to it. That's the only way it can be. But the other part is all right, and I know he's joking, but still, if you're going to call it a bye week, what part of that defense do you think the Chargers offense was going to come out of that game? Even if the Chargers had won by 14 or 21 points, they were going to have some bruises and some micro tears and strains that you get when you play the Texans defense, because they're going to hit you. They're going to make you really, really, really uncomfortable. And they turned Justin Herbert into just like a bad quarterback for one evening. I'm not going to sit here and act like, Justin Herbert isn't a good quarterback or anything. They haven't been good versus good defenses this year. And I know a lot of you had made that point. Maybe I should have leaned into that a little harder. But they brought out the worst version of him. The way they brought out the worst version of Josh Allen at NRG Stadium, the way they brought out the worst version of Jared Goff for at least 3 quarters, the way they brought out the worst version of Tua Tagovailoa. They kept Anthony Richardson as bad as he typically is, but that you can do something, you can make a run that rises above the X's and O's if you have an opportunistic defense like that. It's rare, and it's really, really hard to do over the course of multiple playoff games. I think I have to go back to Lovie Smith's Bears making it to the Super Bowl, and that was with Rex Grossman as their quarterback. They were a very turnover-heavy, peanut punch type of team. The Patriots, when they lost to the Giants, what did the Giants have? The Giants had a ferocious defensive line that made Tom Brady really, really uncomfortable. So that's what I'm banking on. And I'm not thinking about a run. I'm thinking about next week and how can they be a better version of what they were 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. The Chiefs game, I feel like I've been uncomfortable with the way that the Chiefs game's been framed by a lot of people, just in that, that was ultimately a game that was lost by CJ by some bad decisions at the end. But they drove down into the red zone and through a couple of bad mistakes and poor clock management or game management by either Bobby or CJ, they just knocked themselves out of position. So it's not like they went up to Kansas City and played in Kansas City and showed that, oh no, they can't hang with Kansas City. They just couldn't do it in the fourth quarter. Let's see. Dude, the offense was bad. I don't know if you guys are arguing with me or somebody else. I watched the Chargers press conference after the game. The Chargers coach paid a lot of respect to this team on both sides of the ball, especially CJ. As far as the offense being bad, the offense was atrocious for the first 27 or 28 minutes. It was atrocious right up until the very play. This is a weird game where you can point to not just a specific play, but they didn't turn it around because they had a fumbled snap that turned into a deep strike to Xavier Hutchinson and ended up being a magnificent drive that soaked up some time, gave the defense a little bit more rest. The time of possession was ridiculous at that point. And so it wasn't even a play that turned it around. It was after CJ recovered his own fumble. And CJ talked about it in the press conference. He was looking at the defense, took his eye off the ball and just lost it. And it ended up being like when there's a muffed punt, but the returner, it bounces off his chest, it goes in front of him. And how many times have we seen that end up being a huge return just because it screws up the rhythm of the defense. It's not what they're used to seeing. So yeah, the offense was in the second half. The fact that they were running the ball made me feel good. The fact that CJ looked like a much different version of himself in the second half was good. But so I don't know if you're saying the offense was awful. I don't know if you're arguing with me or somebody else. But I've said the entire week and after this game, if they want to make a run, it has to be run by the defense. Because they did some good things tonight offensively, but the only reason they were in the game at all was because the defense played out of their brains in that first half when they weren't getting any help from the offense. The time of possession at one point was 10 minutes. I think at the end of the first quarter, it was 12-3 or something, 12 minutes to 3 minutes. So the fact that the defense kind of gave some cushion to the offense and allowed them to play as poorly as they did, that's the type of performance you're going to have to get out of this defense. And if they can stay healthy, I mean, man, Stingley looked kind of banged up there. Another couple guys on the defense looked banged up. We'll see. It'd be nice if they got a Sunday game next week, but this is a good feeling. I'm going to enjoy this win. I'm not gonna worry too much about the things that didn't get ironed out or they need to iron out, and we'll figure out exactly what's going to happen after all of this. I'll probably do a video later tonight. I don't think I'll do a live stream. I'm gonna walk through the southwest tunnel here, and I'll probably lose my internet. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, all that bullshit.